The Glendale Road Church of Christ proudly presents a weekly exploration of the Word of our living God. This is It Is Written with Minister John Dale.
This morning we continue our study in the parables of Jesus, and what we want to do is to look at perhaps the most familiar parable in all of the teachings of Jesus. There are laws on the books of many states called the Good Samaritan laws. And there's a possibility that some of the people who enforce the laws or who made the laws or who deal with the laws wouldn't know the history and background of why it's called that. I'm sure all of us already know, but if we don't, we'll find out, and we'll be reminded if we do already know about why that story of the Good Samaritan, the parable of Jesus, is such an important one. And we'll look in Luke chapter 10, and we'll begin in verse 25 and go through verse 37. And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" And he said to him, "What is written in the law? What is your reading of it?" So he answered and said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have answered rightly. Do this, and you will live." But he, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Then Jesus answered and said, "A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. And so he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you." So which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? And the lawyer said, "He who showed mercy on him." Then Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." Let's look at the introduction. Jesus' story of a traveling Samaritan who gave aid to a wounded stranger is a story that has left an indelible imprint on the conscience of mankind. And Luke is the only writer who records these words of Jesus. People all over the world talk about the Good Samaritan. Laws on the books, issues that come up in just normal conversation, Good Samaritan. We use the term, if someone just does a good deed, we call that person a Good Samaritan. We give awards called the Good Samaritan Award. Churches give recognition to people and to groups or committees because of Good Samaritan issues. Good Samaritan. As we look at it, the lawyer asked Jesus, "Now who is my neighbor?" Because he had already said the 2 commandments that stand out are love God supremely, love neighbor as self. And Jesus told him, "Okay, that's good. You've got that right from Deuteronomy chapter 6, and then from other passages would tell us that you got it right according to your law." And Jesus said, "You go and do that." So the man said, "Well, who is my neighbor?" He's not asking for genuine motives, but he's asking a good question, and he needs a good answer. And so rather than Jesus give an answer, just here is the definition of a neighbor, that's not what he said. He said, "Let me tell you a story." And the story is one that we will remember as long as we live. So the question that Jesus is being asked now is among many questions that he was asked. You remember the rich young ruler in Matthew 19? He came to Jesus and said, "Good master, what good thing shall I do that I might inherit eternal life?" Then in the parallel account to our text today from Matthew chapter 22, Jesus is asked again by a lawyer. And this is one schooled in the law of Moses. And so Jesus is asked, what must I do? What can I do to inherit eternal life? What can I do more than what I've already done? And so Jesus is asked another question now in our text, and the question is not from good motives, but Jesus knows the motives. We don't have to try to figure out the motives. We can give the benefit of the doubt and move on with it, and we would be wise to do that. But Jesus knew the motives, and he's going to teach this man a valuable lesson. The question is raised by an expert in Jewish law, quoting from Deuteronomy 6 and from Leviticus 19. Love God, love neighbor. That's Bible, and that's Old Testament, by the way. This love business is not just New Testament. There's an intensity level that we rise to in the New Testament teachings that they didn't have. Jesus said, "Love one another as I have loved you." That's a new level, but it's the same command. Love was Old Testament as well as New Testament. So this is not brand new information. This is going to be application of good old information. And the question was not asked from pure motives. Jesus' reply was to put the man on the spot, so he just asked, "Who is my neighbor?" And as we look at the conclusion of the lesson in just a few minutes, we're going to be asking, who is it that I can be a neighbor to? Rather than try to dodge an issue by saying, well, who is my neighbor? Maybe this person doesn't fit the definition of neighbor. Jesus is going to allow us to make application by saying, well, who is it that I can be a neighbor to? How can I show that I got the lesson? We have to deal with the heart. And when the heart is committed to the Lord, it's just amazing what actions will follow. The road that they were traveling was a road from Jerusalem, which is 2,300 feet above sea level, down to Jericho, which is right by the Red Sea, and that's 1,100 feet below sea level. That's 3,400 feet in 17 miles that is downhill, and some of it is a steep decline. And this man is traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho. Now, if you look on a map, you'll see that Jericho is actually a little bit north of the city of Jerusalem, and yet it's down. It is down, literally down. They're almost parallel to each other, but Jerusalem is slightly south of Jericho, and yet it's down from Jerusalem to Jericho. The travelers on this road are 4 in number. Number 1 is the victim. We don't know anything about him except that he was a victim. This man was simply traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho, evidently minding his own business. But what happened was, the priest saw him and did nothing. Then the Levite saw him and did nothing. And the Samaritan saw him and did something. He did something to help. We don't know how many thieves there were. We don't know who they were or where they came from, perhaps hiding in some of the places where you could hide. Maybe that's what they did for a living. They robbed people for a living. There are people today who steal for a living. That's the way they live. That's their lifestyle. But the thieves have done their work and they've gone. They've left the man half dead, Jesus said. The priest would be offering the sacrifices in the temple and doing the priestly things, working 2 weeks out of the year, and the Levite from the tribe of Levi would be assisting the priest in those religious duties. So they were both religious people, and perhaps they looked like religious people. Maybe they dressed with certain kinds of robes, or they would call attention to themselves by how they walked and how they dressed and how they carried their noses up in the air, or whatever it is that Jesus is trying to teach. That is, that the religious order of the day did not come through to show compassion. But that fourth one is the Samaritan. The Samaritans were not just people from Samaria. If you look at a map, you'll see Galilee in the north, Samaria in the middle, and Judea in the south. The Samaritans were not purebred, pure-blooded anything. They were not Gentiles officially. They were not Jews officially. But they were the mixed breed of the Jews and the Gentiles, and they were hated by both the Jews and the Gentiles. They were in no man's land. And so if you wanted to make a slurring remark about somebody in that day, you could call him a Samaritan. And that would be a degrading name. The Samaritan is one Jesus chose to use in his parable to make the point. Remember, this is a lawyer. This is one skilled and schooled in Jewish law. He knows that law. He can quote vast volumes of the Old Testament law, the text. But his heart is not given to God. Jesus is going to teach him a lesson, and he's going to use what we would think of, in our terms, the scum of the earth, to teach him. The lowest form of life in the mind of the Jew would be a Samaritan, even worse than a Gentile. And so Jesus is going to teach a valuable lesson. Now, there are three pictures of the Christian. There is no room in Christianity for pious platitudes and hair-splitting definitions. Jesus compels us to see that Christianity is a way of living. I realize that details are important, but details for the sake of details can't be the most important thing. We need to be sure and understand that it is a commitment from the heart to a way of life, not just one more command that a person has obeyed. So number one is the Christian's compassion. The Samaritan, not the religionists of the day, had compassion on the man who was left beside the road. The world needs scientists and doctors and lawyers and engineers and astronauts. We need all of those highly skilled professional people. We need all of those. But the world also needs those people and all the rest of us to have hearts of compassion. So if you make your living at one thing and I make my living at something else, that doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is the commitment that you and I have both made to Jesus Christ as Lord. And then we do what we do, whatever it is. Washing dishes at the restaurant, that's not a very glamorous thing. But if that's what your job is, you will do it differently as a Christian from the way someone of the world would do it just to get a paycheck. Anybody who's skilled or unskilled can develop compassion for other people. And if we don't, we're missing a blessing and we're missing an opportunity to praise God. In the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes section, Jesus said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy." The question for me then is, am I a merciful person? Do I extend compassion and mercy to other people? Or am I harshly judgmental of others? Am I quick to find fault with something or everything, with people? How do I conduct my heart in response to what I have learned from the teachings of Jesus? There must be compassion in our hearts toward other people. There are lots and lots of things that the priest could have said or the Levite could have said as to why they didn't stop to help the needy man. I can imagine some of the things. I've got more important things to do. After all, I'm a priest. I'm a Levite. I've got more important things to do. I don't want to get my robes dirty. I might be late for an appointment. There are all kinds of things that these men could have been thinking. Or I'm just too good. Let some common person do this. That's menial. That's messy. Today, although our day is different, we might say, I don't want to get involved because there's a likelihood of being sued. After all, I'm not a doctor. That's why the states have passed the Good Samaritan laws. I can't fix things, but I can sometimes do something to help. In a day of cell phones and OnStar and all these other things, there are a lot of things that we can do to help, even without becoming directly involved in what would look like practicing medicine without a law. We don't want to pretend like we're doctors. But if a person has an open hemorrhage, if you can find a source to give pressure to an artery that's between that injury and the heart, you might do him some good. And it doesn't mean that you're out of order, or if you are sued, so what? You still did the right thing by showing compassion. If you spend half your life in court, do the right thing anyway. You say, well, do you always stop at every wreck? No, not at every wreck. Not everybody needs to stop. But if there is something that's going on that I can do something to be of help, or might be able to do something to be of help, or to help loan someone my cell phone. I've done that lots of times. I can't fix it, but I can let you call, or I can do the calling for you. I was driving down 12th Street back a couple, 3 years ago, and the traffic was heavy, and I had stopped at the intersection of 12th and Main. And I'm in the outside lane, and I'm heading south. The vehicle just next to me was a huge truck. And the fuel tank was right by my window. As I looked out, there's the fuel tank, and it's on fire. There's flames coming out the top of that fuel tank. Now, what do you think I do? Take another bite of my hamburger? No, thank you. The first thing I did was roll down my window as though I was going to blow it out, I guess. I don't know what I was going to do. But then I thought, well, the driver can't see me. He's way up there, and I'm way down here. I can't go anywhere because I'm in traffic. And then I thought, I think I can do something. I can jump a curb. And I did. I drove up on the curb, and I got his attention, and I told him what was going on, and he got out and had a rag there and smothered it out, got back in his truck and drove on off. Now, how close were we to disaster? I don't know. But flames and fuel tanks just don't seem to go together well with me. What should I have done? I don't know. Maybe it would have burned itself out. Maybe it's just a little bit of fuel on top that had ignited for whatever reason, and it wasn't going to get hot enough to do it. I don't know. But I thought I had to do something. And my compassion was not just for him. My compassion was for me too. I wanted to do something to help everybody. And as far as I know, I did. He put out the fire. I got back off the curb and got back in the street. And as far as I know, no law officer ever saw anything that was going on. And we went on our way rejoicing. What do you do when there's somebody who actually has a need and it's very obvious and it could be life-threatening? Do you do something? Yes. What do? Do the best you know to do and get the help of those who are trained to do the professional things. But sometimes it's first aid that makes the difference. If you have an opportunity to take standard and advanced first aid, take it. If you have an opportunity to take a CPR class, take it. If you have an opportunity to study disaster relief and to learn some good ideas, avail yourself of the opportunities, because it could help you and it could help your family and it could help the rank stranger, even one who's beaten and stripped and robbed and left beside the road half dead. It could be that good preparation in the happier times can show compassion in the times of real need. Second is the Christian's conduct. All the world remembers this man's compassion, but the reason the world remembers the Samaritan's compassion is because he did something. I don't know for sure, and I'd like to take up for the priest and the Levite all I could. I don't want to take up for them too much. But I have an idea that one of them, or maybe both of them, was walking down to Jericho and said, "Oh my, that fellow is really in bad straits. I pray to God to help him." Maybe he prayed for him. Maybe one of them said, "Well, we'll add him to our prayer list when we get back down to the synagogue." I don't know what they were thinking. But the point is, they didn't help him. They didn't show compassion. I have to learn to show compassion, and so do you. And it's going to show up in our conduct. It can't just be an emotion. It needs to be put into practice so that it is definable actions rather than sentimental feelings. We need to understand that compassion has conduct built into it. And then third is the Christian circle. And here you have the circle of Christian responsibility in the world. The Jews in the time of Christ had a very narrow, self-centered world. You were either Jews or you were nothing. If you were Gentile, you were nothing. If you were Samaritan, you were less than nothing. But our circle includes everybody made in the image of God. And we look upon people as those for whom Jesus died. We don't just see people for what they can do for us. We see people as people. We see them as God's creation. And when we see them that way, we're going to do a great deal more to show that love and compassion, free from prejudice, and hearts of genuine compassion and real conduct that praises God. Now, what circle do you run in? What about me? Do we step across the line from our comfortable circles into other circles, such as others with ethnic background that is different? How do we deal with the racial issues? What do we do? One day while I was gone this past week, I took about an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours to go to a store, Sam's store down in Memphis. I needed to get a couple of things, but I wanted to look, and I wasn't in a terrible hurry, and I enjoyed not having to be in a hurry. And I decided that I would just kind of run a little test, that I would speak to everybody I met. I'm going to speak to, I'm not busy, I'm not rushed, I'm just pushing a buggy. And I've got a few things in it, and I'm going to look, and I'm going to speak to everybody I meet. It's amazing. This person is young, this person is old, this person is black, this person is white, this person is Hispanic, this person is whatever it is. It didn't matter. I got to speak to all the little children. Enjoyed that. And many of them, just as cute as they could be, they just speak, and others had been taught not to speak to strangers, and so they are frightened. And the moms and the dads, excuse me, the moms and the dads did what they did, but nearly everybody spoke. And there was one fellow that looked to be about my age. He was a black man who was looking for something. So I spoke to him, and he asked me where it was, and I told him I didn't know. I guess he thought I worked there, and I didn't know. But I said, I'll help you find it. Well, that was amazing. So I left my buggy there, and he and I go walking off together looking for what he was looking for. So I asked somebody who did know. I asked somebody who worked there, and I went with him, and there it was. And we talked about it, and he got him a box in his hand, and we walked back, and my buggy was still there, and nobody had taken it. Everything was fine. And he said, thank you very much. I said, well, you're very welcome. I hope you have a great day. And he said, I've already had a great day. I said, well, good for you. Now, what could I have done? Oh, I could have set up a Bible study with him maybe. I could have enrolled him in a Bible correspondence course. I don't know what I could have done other than the fact I just decided to speak to him. Nearly everybody spoke. And I don't think it's just Southern hospitality, although that might have something to do with it as far as personalities are concerned with some people. But nearly everybody appreciates being spoken to. Nearly everybody appreciates that. And if you have a child with them and you look at the parent and say, that is a fine young'un. Sometimes I couldn't tell whether it was a boy or a girl, but it didn't matter because young'un was okay. And they'd say, well, thank you. And then one would say, tell the man thank you. And the little old child would say, thank you. And I would go on. And I just decided that there's no sense wasting good time at Sam's or somewhere else. Showing compassion, though, in this story is a lot deeper than just a greeting. Showing compassion is willing to stop what you're doing and get your hands dirty and be involved in something that is potentially life-threatening to you and to the other person, but you're trying to help. You're trying to show compassion. Now, the way the story concludes is this. Who was neighbor, Jesus said? Well, the one that helped him. Jesus said, that's right. You go and do likewise. We need to ask, whose neighbor am I? The Samaritan sets a worthy example. The attentive look, the compassionate heart, the helpful hand, the willing foot, and the open purse. That's what compassion will lead us to do by way of conduct. If we just claim to be followers of Christ, or we claim to be religious, we put on our robes, we act religious, whatever that might be. The people are still in need, and we didn't do anything to help them. We just acted religious. The world has religion coming out its ears. The world is starving for true, humble, sincere, active, devoted followers of Jesus Christ. And there's where you and I can come in to help people when they really need it. Hopefully to help them to where they're strong enough to be looking for other people to help. We don't want to enable people to just be helped and helped and helped and helped and not help themselves. But we want to help them and not judge them, and then hopefully share fellowship with them when they've been led to Christ, so that they then can be part of the team that's out helping other people. The Good Samaritan, Jesus said to the lawyer, you go and do likewise. He's telling you and me, you go and do likewise. And so, whose neighbor am I? Whose neighbor are you? Who is my neighbor? Who is your neighbor? The circle of our influence and activity needs to be directed to the glory, to the glorification of the name of God, and to the good of one another. And when we do that, we're glorifying God, we're obeying His commands, we're emulating the example of Jesus, we're conforming to the image of Jesus, we're obeying the teachings and commands of Jesus, but we're also in the real world, in the marketplace of life, where real people are who have real feelings and real needs, and they can be helped. And the Lord gets the glory, the people get the help, and we find a certain level of fulfillment in knowing that we've actually done something to be of help. Go and do likewise, Jesus said. And thank you for being here today.
This has been It Is Written, a weekly exploration of the Word of our living God with John Dale, minister of the Glendale Road Church of Christ. Please visit us online at glendaleroadchurch.org.